Bill Croskey-Merritt is having a better season than Saquon Barkley. Is Bobby Wagner's time in the NFL coming to an end? And did Marshon Lattimore do enough to silence his critics? Let's discuss. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Command Show. My name is Grant Mitchell, and we are here to talk about everything involving the Washington Commanders. I wanted to come back with a double upload today to address some comments made by Dan Quinn at his media availability on Victory Monday, as they like to call it. But then I also wanted to break down some key numbers from the Commanders' win against the Chargers, 27-10 out on the West Coast. And I wanted to talk about some burning topics because there have been some players that have been firmly in the headlines for Commanders fans, reporters, and everybody out there just talking about this team. Like, as I mentioned, Bobby Wagner, Marshon Lattimore, Bill Croskey-Merritt, and a couple of others. So let's go ahead and get to those discussions. But before we do, guys, make sure you hit the like button if you are enjoying the content on the channel. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it and how much it does help me out and helps me grow. And as Commanders fans, Commander family, we want to take over YouTube. So whether you don't like me, but you do like the Commanders, you just want to support the content, hit that like button. Okay, so before we get into some of the more controversial topics, let me address what Dan Quinn said at his press conference. A lot of fluff, as per usual, from Dan Quinn. Yeah, we love his competitiveness. Yeah, he's really hitting the markers, doing a great job. You guys know the drill, right? We've been here before. We've discussed this. And with Dan Quinn being our coach for a year and a half, we know what he's going to say. But some big updates. There is optimism that Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, and Sam Cosmi will all be back for the next game, which, if you didn't know, allow me to make your day here or potentially ruin it, depending on on what happens next weekend. But I have confidence we will come out on the winning side because the Commanders are hosting the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football in Northwest Stadium, wearing the All Blacks, just like they did last year when, of course, the Hail Mary game happened. So it's only fitting that there is optimism that Noah Brown could be returning to the fold for this game. Now, on talking about Bill Croskey-Merritt, DQ said that Bill's heavy reps in that Chargers game, he got 14 carries, added another 2 receptions. He said that his heavy reps were a result of gap scheme runs working early on in the game. However, he also implied that Bill's role will continue to increase as the season progresses. Bill got, like I said, 14 carries. Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez, I want to say combined for 6. And I see Rod, I don't think, got on the field until the third quarter. So whether DQ is trying to keep opposing coordinators a little off balance, second guessing a little bit, and it was a spur of the moment on the fly decision, hey, we're going to ride with the hot hand, or whether it was, no, there's a clear game plan in place. Bill is our dude, and we're going to treat him as such. Regardless of what the case is, DQ said expect him to continue to have a large role in the offense. And I want to hold myself accountable because I was listening to John Keim speak with, I believe, the Sports Junkies on 106.7 The Fan, and he made some very good points, which were Bill didn't play football last year. He's not coming from a Georgia, an Alabama, a Notre Dame, a Clemson, a program that prepares you for the top level. This is a zero-star high school recruit who did spend 4 years at Alabama State, and his step up was to New Mexico. And then when he finally got to a P4 school, he only got to play 1 game with Arizona, and then he was on the practice squad for the rest of the season. So there was a literal physical adjustment. You could see that from them holding him out of practice during the preseason. They held him out, I believe, was it the first or the third preseason game? I think he sat out of one of those with a shoulder. I don't want to call it an injury, but he was just a little banged up. He missed some practices already this season, and my guess is they are just gradually increasing the physical load on his body, and also they're working on the mental side of it. He's done a great job with the ball in his hands, but Cliff Kingsbury and DQ have said he's still got to learn how to run the routes correctly. He's got to learn how to pass protect, but he does seem to be doing that. Only 2 catches in the last game, but not tons of opportunities to catch the ball, and when he did catch it, made good of it. Went for 39 yards on those 2 catches, so about 20 yards per pop. That's really good. You'll take that. And his pass protection does seem to be getting better. So just like everybody, I've been extremely encouraged by Bill, and we're going to talk about him more in just a second, like I said, but it seems like we should all prepare for Bill to really be the bell cow moving forward. And then the final note, DQ said that he likes that any member of the offensive line can pull and run into space. And now he didn't say this part, but I'm inserting this myself. The Bill 15-yard run up the left side where you had Tyler Biadasz pulling to the outside was a great example of that. As he gets to the first level, it's a linebacker or defensive end, someone who's up on the line of scrimmage. He gets a hand on them just to reroute them slightly back into the blocker, and then he speeds ahead, and he knocks the next player coming in pursuit to tackle Bill, knocks him off their spot, gives Bill an open lane to the end zone. So we've seen it from Tunsil, we've seen it from Connolly, we've seen it from Wiley, we've seen it from Chris Paul, and we have seen it from Tyler Biadasz. And I agree. And when I think back to this offseason, I can remember DQ speaking specifically about the upgraded athleticism of the offensive line and how that will pay dividends moving forward. Now, obviously, that was when Brandon Coleman was a member of the starting offensive line, and he's been active for the last 2 or 3 games. But Chris Paul has done an excellent job, and that actually transitions very well into my next topic, which was Chris Paul very, very quietly has arguably been the Commanders' best offensive lineman this season. Laramie Tunsil might still take that crown because he has been excellent in pass protection, but Chris Paul has not been bad either. And I have noticed ever since him and Wiley got inserted into the starting lineup, the physicality at the point of attack seems to have increased quite drastically. Chris Paul against the Chargers, 35 pass blocking snaps, 0 pressures, 0 QB hits, 0 sacks, an 88.3 pass blocking grade. And like I said, although the run blocking actually wasn't the best that it's been this season against the Chargers, which is a little strange because the Chargers do use a light box at one of the highest rates in the NFL. But even despite that, I still feel Chris Paul's strength, most of all, is size and strength, but he does have a little bit of athleticism to him too. He can get out and move. He can continue to pull and execute these gap scheme runs like DQ always wants to get to. And this makes me think back, and I like to make fun of Dan Quinn, not actually, but I'm just kind of poking fun at him. But I say he engages in coach speak. He says the same things over and over. Well, one of the things he always talks about is competition. And I have to say, Chris Paul, as a 7th round draft pick of maybe the 22, 23 class a few years ago, 7th round draft pick, Brandon Coleman was supposed to be the guy. Obviously the future. 3rd round draft pick last year. He makes the move from left tackle to left guard. Seems like a perfect pairing sitting next to Laramie Tunsil. And Chris Paul emerges, wasn't even a guarantee he was going to make the roster, and now he's a starter. And he has looked better than Brandon Coleman did at any point. And like I said, he has arguably been the Commanders' best offensive lineman this season. So as easy, as low-hanging of the fruit it is to poke at DQ and say, hey, your competitiveness, your competition stuff, it means nothing. You just don't want to reveal anything. Well, this is proof that he's actually telling the truth. And this is what they preach. Also, we got to give credit to Luke McCaffrey and Jalen Lane, because as they have gotten their opportunities increased with the injuries to Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown, you start to respect them more. You say, oh, whoa, I thought Luke wasn't really going to be a factor at all on this team, but I'm really liking what I'm seeing. Terry McLaurin is the master deep ball tracker. I don't know if Deebo Samuel would have made that catch. I don't know if Noah Brown would. I don't know if Jalen Lane would. Jacory Brooks, Chris Moore, Tate Martin, Robbie Chosen. I don't know if any of them would have made that catch. But Luke McCaffrey did. I don't need to question. I know that he did. Now, I'm going to say this with the caveat that the improved offensive line and the running game play a huge, huge part in this. But in a game like the one we saw on Sunday, in a game like this one we saw against the Raiders, heck, even how the Commanders' offense looked against the Falcons. I know it was a loss, but how their offense looked. Have the absences of Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown been that big of a deal? I know Terry got injured right at the end of the Raiders game, and it was on a great catch, so maybe that's a little unfair. But let's just talk about that Falcons game, and let's talk about that Chargers game. Did you notice Terry McLaurin wasn't on the field? Now, let me say this, okay? Don't kill me in the comments, first of all, and second of all, don't feel like I'm calling anybody out, okay? I was firmly a member of the pay Terry crowd, within reason. I said, do not go over $30 million. I said, I'm not comfortable going over $27 million. The way that Adam Peters set it up Terry's going to be making like 20, maybe less than 20. I actually forget the numbers at this point. I forget exactly what the deal worked out to, but it was not a lot of money. It wasn't even at that 27 million mark that I said for the first 2 years of his contract. Then you can cut him for a smaller penalty. Again, I forget the number. It's been a while since I've looked at it, but it's not a big number. Let's call it like 10, $11 million, something like that. Again, please let me know the actual numbers if you care to look them up on your own time. But with Terry getting that contract, I said, okay, that's great because we'll keep him for 2 years, then we'll cut him. That's exactly what we need. In games like these, I can't help but sit back and wonder, man, if you had taken that money, or maybe if you had taken the draft capital you got by trading Terry, what would you have on this team right now? Could we have another lockdown corner? Could we have a speedy playmaking linebacker? Could we have, I don't know. Point being, what additions could have been made? Now, what's the word I'm looking for here? So this isn't the word, but I just want to urge everybody to be a little cautious because there will come a time, there will come a game where Bill's not averaging nearly 7 yards per carry, where the offense is getting gashed, and you're going to need a number one receiver to step up. Now, we're still waiting to see Terry do that because this is the worst start. It was the worst 3-game start to his career, and then he missed the next 2 games. So we're waiting to see wide receiver 1 level Terry McLaurin back on the Commanders in 2025. If he gets there and it's a big game where nothing else is going, then we will look at it and say, that's why you paid Terry McLaurin. But just through 5 games, I haven't seen that yet. Okay, and I don't think that's unfair to say. While also adding the caveat, the time maybe hasn't come yet. Hasn't come at this point. But we got to wait and see on that front. Let me move on over. And I want to talk about Bill and Saquon Barkley, which is a crazy statement to make. Now, I'm taking nothing away from what Saquon did over the course of his career or what he did last year because he's been a phenomenal talent and he was just a sensational, historic player last year. This season, Saquon Barkley is only averaging 3.2 yards per carry and 53.4 yards per game. He's 31st in attempts per broken tackle and 38th in yards after contact per carry among qualified running backs. Now, if there are any Eagles fans here or even just objective football fans, you're going to say, hey, look, you're so far out of line here. Saquon is facing stacked boxes. The opposing defense is no to key in on him. It's actually not true. Now, Saquon is facing a relatively high stacked box rate. He's facing stacked boxes at the 10th highest level of all qualified running backs. So that's something. It's a little above average. It's certainly not at the top, but it's also a little above average. So we'll give him that, but not as much as we're going to give Mr. Bill Croskey-Merritt. I said Saquon was facing stacked boxes. That means, by the way, 8+ defenders in the box. I said Saquon was facing stacked boxes at the 10th highest rate. You know who's getting them at the 9th highest rate? Mr. Bill Croskey-Merritt. He is currently averaging 6.6 yards per carry, which is the highest in a season since Jamaal Charles in 2010, who averaged 6.4. That was for an entire season. Bill's got a long way to go. Last year, Derrick Henry led the league at 5.9 yards per carry. Saquon, who I just said is at 3.2, was at 5.8 last season. And those guys, in case you forgot, rushed for 2,000 and 1,900 yards. Obviously, a lot more volume than Bill. We're only 5 games into his career. He only got 4 carries, I think, against the Packers. So certainly some more volume, some more consistency. We're waiting to see, but he's off to an excellent start. Also, with Bill, he is currently 2nd in the entire NFL in yards after contact per carry. Yards after contact to me is a huge deal because that is when it transitions from your offensive line did its job, now you got to do your job. So he's 2nd in the league in that category among players with at least 20 carries, either 20 or 30 carries is the benchmark that I set. First is RJ Harvey, who's also a rookie of the Broncos, at 4.45, so 0.05 more yards after contact per carry. However, Harvey has only gotten 6 carries per game. Bill's gotten, let me do quick math here, he's got a little over 8 per game. Now, here's the interesting piece, and this is how everything loops back, just like a great story. The conclusion loops back to the intro without you seeing it coming. Bam! Here's the loop. Nearly 80% of Bills' runs this season have been gap scheme runs. So for anybody who isn't familiar, gap scheme is your horizontal pulling guards, pulling tackles, pulling the center. It's those types of run versus we're just going straight forward, working double teams, getting up to the second level. Those are zone schemes. That's your Chris Rodriguez style, maybe your Jeremy McNichol style, certainly your Brian Robinson Jr. style. They did a good job putting him about 50-50, but you would feel like they matched his style of running more so. This gap scheme stuff that they said they wanted to get to all throughout the offseason, they've done it for Bill, and he's put it to great success. Now, we're going to wait and see how opposing defensive coordinators decide to treat him, but, and this is where I can maybe get back to Terry McLaurin, if teams are going to continue to stack the box against the Commanders, knowing the ability that Jaden Daniels can have, if you key in wrong on a read option and he's able to escape out the side with their deadly screen game, think back to Terry against the Lions last season, and the deep ball shots they will take. Jaden, it's hard for me to remember a stretch in Jaden's career where Cliff Kingsbury turned the safety off and allowed Jaden to consistently throw intermediate or deep shots as much as he did from about the time of that Luke pass, the 50-yard completion. There was a 16 or 17-yarder to Jalen Lane earlier in the second quarter as well. But it felt like all throughout the third and the fourth quarter, Jaden was hanging in there, throwing at least 10, 15 yards down the field, sometimes 20, 25 yards down the field, connecting on deep shots in a Chargers zone defense that had been outstanding all of last season and all of this season so far. So I do wonder if the running game success continues, teams load up the box, you get Terry back, you get Noah back, maybe Luke continues to ascend, Jalen Lane continues to prove himself, Debo's your do-it-all guy. Does this become a power run team mixed with deep shots down the field? Can you open up the game more that way? They already do such a great job stressing opposing defenses horizontally. Can we now get to that vertically because of the improvements in the running game? That's something that I am extremely excited to see, and I really see the potential there, and I hope that we are able to get to it. Now, let me get this over to the defensive side of the football. Two players to talk about, like I mentioned back in the intro, Bobby Wagner and Marshon Lattimore. So here's what I want to say. Bobby Wagner is still elite at what he does best, what he should be doing at this stage of his career. Moving forward, he had those 2 sacks against, was it Geno? I think it was against Geno Smith in that Raiders game. He is averaging, or not even averaging, he has the lowest missed tackle rate of his career, at least at this point. He's on pace for it. He's also on pace for his second most run stops in one season. He was one of the highest graded blitzing linebackers last season. He's up there again. Phenomenal player at doing the things that fit him at this stage of his career. With that being said, moving forward is great. Him moving laterally and backwards, that's where I'm starting to get a little queasy sometimes. I would say, out of respect, I would say I question it, but the truth is I do get a bit of a feeling in my stomach. Like, I talked endlessly about isolating Bobby Wagner in space against Bijan Robinson against the Falcons, and then look what happens. You get a 69 completion on a simple rail route with a mesh concept, and Wagner gets picked off, doesn't have the speed to catch up. You also saw some of that, I got to say, you saw some of that on the 40-something yard scramble by Justin Herbert on their first possession of the Chargers game. Reeves whiffs on the tackle, obviously, but Wagner is right there. He gets caught on a block by Amari and Hampton. He turns around as Herbert's scrambling out of the pocket. He's like a step behind him, and with a quicker first step, and I'm just going to put Jordan McGee in there just because we know he's on the Commanders. It could be any fast linebacker. It could be Edgerrin Cooper. It could be Zach Bond, Divine Diablo. Take your pick. But with some real speed in the middle of the field, that's a first down for Herbert, but it's a 6-yard run, a 7-yard run, however much he needed. It's not 40. And Wagner, once he turns, it was evident that he was not going to catch him. So this is what I talk about. Going forward, excellent. Going laterally, going backwards, that's where I'm getting some hesitation here. So Bobby Wagner this season as a pass defender, dropping into coverage. He's been targeted 11 times, allowed 10 receptions for 135 yards, which is 27 yards per game. That's the highest completion percentage allowed in his entire career. And it's his highest yards per reception allowed in his career. Is that inflated by the 69-yarder to Bijan? Yes, but guess what? That was on Bobby Wagner, so that goes on his resume. Justin Herbert over the middle of the field on Sunday. And obviously not all of these passes were directed at Wagner, but we know that he does occupy the middle of the field an awful lot. So Justin Herbert over the middle of the field from 0 to 20 yards, the short and the intermediate stuff. He was 12 of 15, averaged 10.5 yards per attempt. That's an 80% completion percentage. He had a touchdown, and then he did have the interception, which was a batted ball by Johnny Newton, which was picked off by Sainristil. So touchdown, it's hard for me to say it's not Wagner's fault because he was in the area. Baluvu was also in the area. The whole team just didn't do a great job of getting to McConkey. McConkey was on a man-beating route, but he found the soft spot in the zone and sat in it. Herbert made a great throw. I would really be interested to hear from Joe Witt Jr. on who he assigns blame to, who should have been there on that play. But whatever, we'll leave it in question. The interception didn't really have anything to do with him. And again, 12 of 15, 100, 100 and something yards, 10.5 yards per attempt. Not all of that does go to Wagner, but as the Commanders have transitioned to more of this zone-style defense, which they've somewhat had to because of the limitations of their personnel, spent all offseason talking about we're going to play man coverage, then they quickly found out, oh crap, we can't hold up when we play man coverage. I do just wish there was more speed in the middle of the field. And Jordan Magee flashed on Sunday. He got 12 snaps on defense, not special teams, on defense, which was a career high. That pass rush where he shoots up the middle on a blitz early in the third quarter and he flushes Herbert into Newton and gets the sack. I haven't seen anything like that from the Commanders in the middle of the field in a long time. I'm just going to say that. Outstanding play on the goal line. There was a run play where he gets in the backfield early, misses the tackle, but reroutes the running back. I think it was Haskins, and it goes for like 1 yard or no gain, something like that. You see the explosive potential there. I don't know how he is in pass coverage, obviously. And do I want him as the signal caller? No, I would rather have Bobby Wagner retain those responsibilities. But I want Jordan Magee on the field because the defense lacks playmakers. And from what Magee has shown in small samples, he looks like a playmaker. So with Wagner, with there being strong diminishing returns and him moving backwards, still got to keep him on the field for his presence in the run and as a blitzer. But let's just get Magee in there. Another 12, 15 snaps. Let's continue to work him and see what he does. The last player to talk about before I jet on out of here, Marshon Lattimore. So I wanted to put this out there because I don't know if bashed is the right word because that implies a negative connotation. I have criticized Marshon Lattimore, and I have been very clear in saying the Commanders did the right thing in trading for him last season because they saw what kind of season they were having. They saw the potential they had. They had to make a trade for a cornerback. You needed a star, a shutdown, a guy who could be physical. There weren't many of those guys on the market. Marshon Lattimore was. You had to go trade for him. You had to try it because you couldn't survive with Benjamin St-Juste and Emmanuel Forbes and Michael Davis as your starting corners. I do not regret the trade at all from that aspect because you took the swing. It didn't work out. At least it hasn't up to this point. Marshon Lattimore, bad start to the season. I called for him to be benched. I called for him to have his playing time reduced. I called for him to be cut at the end of the season. And I still haven't changed my mind on that. But I need to give him props where it's due because I believe in accountability. I believe in being fair. Marshon Lattimore is only targeted twice against the Chargers, gave up 2 receptions for 17 yards. There was 1 6-yard. Oh, actually, before I get into that, I said he gave up 17 yards. 13 of those yards were after the catch. So not like he was being targeted down the field. It was like quick pass and then they run and they get tackled. So credit to Lattimore there. One of the plays was a 6-yard completion to Ladd McConkey. He ran a short cross. Lattimore was playing off match coverage. Did a solid job of tracking him over the middle. Wagner pointed a finger on it like somebody get on him. Lattimore was a slight step behind, but he couldn't have done any better than he did. And he didn't get caught up in the traffic. Got to McConkey, made the tackle. Only 6 yards, wasn't a first down. So credit to him there. If that's your low light of the game, that's a really solid game. And then I watched all of the other plays that I could. And unless I missed it, I think the other completion that they said was on Lattimore, I wouldn't even assign it to him. I would say that was Jeremy Reeves. Lattimore was playing the deep third in a cover 3, dropping back. The Chargers were bunched left. Quentin Johnston went on a quick in, about 4 yards or so, and then dove in. Jeremy Reeves, who lined up in a cover 2 shell, was supposed to buzz down, and he did. He actually almost jumped it and got a pick, but the ball got to Johnston a split second before, and then Johnston went down. Ran after the catch for just a little bit, and then he went down. So I I wouldn't assign that to Lattimore, which means in my book, again, unless I missed the actual play where it happened, I think he gave up 1 reception for 6 yards, and 2-3 yards of those were after the catch. So an excellent game from Lattimore in that respect. He was the least targeted defensive back that started the game for the Commanders. So with Sainer still and Amos and Reeves and Quan Martin, least targeted defender. There's been a shift to zone coverage for the Commanders, like I mentioned. This is going to be great when the D-line is eating, like they were against the Chargers. When they were getting home, when they were getting pressure, Herbert was flustered. It was hard for him to make plays. But the corners have to be able to hold up when there is a shift to man and when they are blitzing. I have not liked a lot of the zone coverage stuff. It was bad the last couple of weeks against the Raiders, against the Falcons. It was really bad. In this game against the Chargers, it wasn't really the defensive backs who had problems with the zone coverage. I thought the linebackers thought they were let down. They let the team let the team down a little bit. Words are difficult with their lack of speed in the middle of the field, but you can work on that. The safeties too, I felt like they could have done better. You can work on that. The corners, I felt like they were solid. I don't mind playing soft zone coverage on first down and second down if you're going to continue to win the running downs like the Commanders have up to this point. My question is, when you get to 3rd and short, or the offense is just rolling and it's 1st and 10, but they're airing the ball out, I want to know, how can you do in coverage then? And then also, I'm not really comfortable with man or zone on 3rd down right now. Now, if we're mixing in some blitzes, okay, I can work with that, because let's say even if you're getting home with 4, I would rather blitz 5, even 6 guys on 3rd down to get the ball out of the opposing quarterback's hand quicker, because I still don't trust the secondary yet. And man coverage, they've proven they can beat. And the zone coverage stuff, communication just hasn't been great, and there's not a ton of elite speed on this defense. So if you get intelligent route runners, like Ladd McConkey did a great job a couple of times finding the soft spot in zone coverage, if you're facing intelligent route runners, I just don't know that you're going to be able to cover them. So I think you need to continue to speed the clock up on opposing quarterbacks. Now, the problem with that is when you blitz guys, you're going to give up big plays on the back end. And we saw that routinely hamper the Commanders through the first few weeks of the season. So not as aggressive as they were talking about being during the entire offseason, but I think there is certainly a place for it. Again, I don't mind the soft zone stuff if you're winning the running downs, but you got to find ways, even if it's not a man blitz, even if it's just a zone blitz, which is what the Commanders did a lot of in the Chargers game, because they found out quickly when we run man coverage and we're not spying Herbert, he's going to escape. And we don't have the speed in the middle of the field to stop him. So fire zone blitzes, the occasional man blitzes, maybe you got to leave a QB spy in if you're facing a mobile quarterback, whatever the case may be. Don't mind it situationally, but I'm just tracking how this defense continues its evolution over the course of the season. But guys, that is going to do it for me here. Nice little 30-minute second double upload of the day. Let me know your thoughts on everything that I said in the comment section below. Drop a like if you made it to the end and you haven't hit that like button yet. Also, to the new viewers, please hit the subscribe button. Daily uploads, and today, like I said a couple of times now, I'm really tooting my own horn here without meaning to. Double upload. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you all being here. Let's go, Commanders. Be on the lookout for the Hot Take Tuesday video dropping tomorrow. As I always say, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great day.